Bryan Smith here from Smith Consulting Solutions. Putting together a video today. We failed our ISO audit. Now what? So if this video is helpful to you and you'd like to see more content like this, do me a favor, hit the like, hit the subscribe button, and come back for more information. So for a lot of organizations, you spend a lot of time preparing for ISO audits, and sometimes the audit doesn't go as you planned. So what I want to talk about today is kind of some mental approaches that you can do before the audit, during the audit, and after the audit to kind of help you get through these, because they are very stressful for not only the employees in the audit, but the employees that are outside of the audit, but getting audited for a very short period of time. So, the biggest thing is getting nonconformances. When I help employees or employers implement these ISO 9001 systems, for example, one of the things that I teach them is how to mentally prepare for and approach audits. And the first thing that we talk about is nonconformances should not always be viewed as, we failed the audit, our system is failing. I teach my clients that you should expect to get nonconformances throughout the auditing process. Doesn't mean you're going to get nonconformances every year, but if mentally you're going into an ISO 9001 system and thinking that you're never going to get nonconformances, that our system is always viewed as perfect, maybe go back and reread the continuous improvement section, because that's really what the system is about, is continually improving your system and your business. And one of the ways you do that is through nonconformances, where someone identifies a gap and you improve your system from that gap. So back to where I was going with this, unless you get your, for example, in your registration audit, unless your certificate gets suspended, then I never really think of failing an ISO audit, for example. If you get a major, you get a couple minors, get 3 or 4 minors and a couple OFIs. Those are always opportunities to improve your system. I never look at that as a failure of an audit, and I teach my clients never to look at that as a failure of an audit. That's an opportunity to get better. So I wanted to make that distinction very early on. Non-conformances specifically are very specific opportunities to improve your system, okay? So let's talk about leading up to your audit, whether it be an internal audit, whether it be an external registration audit, whether it be a client, a customer audit, or a vendor audit. First of all, know what's going to be audited. Generally, you're going to be getting an audit schedule. Be very familiar with the audit schedule and what information that the auditor or auditors are going to want to look at. That helps you prepare mentally for what's going to be reviewed, and hopefully no big surprises. Going into the audit, kind of going back to what I initially said, your expectation should be that there's going to be things identified, whether they're nonconformances or opportunities. Like I said, going into audits thinking that there's going to be no nonconformities, no opportunities, everything's going to be perfect, A+. Take a look at your system, because there's always opportunities to improve, okay? During the audit, when you get a nonconformance, if there is further evidence that you can provide that may help the auditor make a further evaluation of potentially, canceling or revoking that audit or that nonconformance, certainly do that, and do it in a respectful way. But a lot of times the auditor identifies a nonconformance, and it's a gap, or, the requirement is not being met. Accept that. Don't argue with the auditor. Just think of it as an opportunity and refocus back on the audit, okay? A lot of times during the end of the day, the closing meeting, for example, auditors will ask if there are any questions. That's another good time to bring up, wanted to kind of revisit, nonconformance number 6. What's it being issued against, specific clause of the standard? What evidence did you see? And once again, if you have an opportunity to say, at the time, we didn't fully understand what you were looking for. We have some further evidence. We would appreciate your time to take a further look at this. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Okay. And then after the audit, so once the audit is done, likely you're going to have a closing meeting. They're going to present their findings to you, whether it be nonconformances or OFIs. Generally they will ask, they'll provide you with some type of a report and ask that you acknowledge that you received them. That's just kind of standard procedure, and go through that process. After the closing meeting, thank the auditor, be respectful of their time. They're there to do a job. You're paying them to evaluate your system. So be mindful of that. And then once the auditor leaves, here's a couple things that I, kind of teach my clients. That initial evening, after the audit is done, put it aside. Okay. And a lot of times I tell my clients, go reward yourself. Go have a good dinner, go, if you enjoy exercising, go for a run, just do something to reward yourself for the time that you put in preparing for and participating in this audit, because they are very taxing mentally. It's a big investment, especially if you're like a quality manager and you're kind of leading through this. So, reward yourself, take a deep breath, okay? I also tell my clients, don't revisit the audit until like 24 hours later, okay? So let a day pass, okay? And then sit down, and I always kind of have them kind of almost do like a journal entry, okay? What went well, what didn't. Look at the nonconformances, start to begin to understand those. And this is kind of the next phase of it. If you've got nonconformances, the next thing that you really need to do is start to look at the response, okay? If they're majors, if they're minors, what's the response time, 30 days, 60 days, and begin to develop a plan to do that, okay? Whatever folder structure you have for your nonconformances, wherever you keep corrective actions and stuff like that, set up folders, put the reports in there, maybe even create a subfolder for evidence. Just start to outline your system so you're ready to respond. Then the next thing that I do is I meet with the impacted managers that are going to have to help me to work through these, these nonconformances, these corrective actions. So if you got a major nonconformance for your design process, if you got a minor nonconformance for your maintenance and your sales process, I would meet with the VP of, engineering, the maintenance manager, the sales manager, meet with them for 10 minutes, say, hey, here's the nonconformance we got. We had to respond in 30 days, 60 days, whatever it is, okay? Let's begin to put together a time on our calendars to work through this. We know we're going to have to do a containment. We know we're going to have to do a root cause. We know we're going to have to do a corrective action. We know we're going to have to do preventative action, and we're going to have to do verification. Start to outline those things, even though you may not be 100% sure what that time, looks like, whether it's going to, take 8 hours to verify, your corrective action or 2. Let's get it on our calendars and make sure that have dates specifically to meet the timeline for a response. If the auditor or the auditing organization requires a corrective action to be back within 20 days, don't wait till the 19th day to put it on your calendar to do it. Okay, so that's the next thing. And then from that point, we go through each of them, and In the response aspect of it, I always teach my clients to do a thorough root cause investigation. A 5 why is a great tool. A fishbone diagram is a right tool. Use those tools to really get to the root cause. Okay. Couple other things to think about with the mindset or the thinking of we failed our ISO audit, now what? One of the mindset shifts that I teach my clients is not asking why did we fail, but what did we learn? Okay. And that really goes back to that continuous improvement aspect of the quality management system, for example, and really going through that exercise of really transitioning your mindset to what did we learn from this experience. So, and then to kind of wrap this up, the most successful organizations, they don't look at audits as failures, like I said in the beginning. They look at these as a roadmap for growth, okay? How can we turn this opportunity, this non-conformance, into an improvement of our system? And that's really what we're after here. So if your organization, just recently had trouble with their ISO audit, don't panic. Like I said, unless your certification, for example, has been suspended, you really haven't failed the audit. You've really just been given a blueprint for improvement. So if you need help preparing for an audit, if you need help going through the audit process, or after the audit with corrective actions, Smith Consulting Solutions is here to provide you with those support mechanisms. So go to my website. I'll leave a link here, and see you on the next video.